Hello, and welcome to the Rankin Report for Sunday, March the 7th, 2021. Continuing our discussion for the last 2 weeks on the Declaration of Independence and the fact that Americans, by and large, know that something is wrong in our nation. But the decline of education regarding the history of the founding of the United States and the mechanisms of our Constitution have left many average Americans without the words to express the uneasy feelings they have. In the hope of providing some form of remedy, I am analyzing, paragraph by paragraph and line by line, the Declaration to show the founders' thoughts and both their differences and similarities to the conditions of nearly 250 years ago. And today we're looking at Part 3, Grievances. After getting everybody's attention who read the document by stating the revolutionary ideas that the rights of all humans come from God and are unalienable or inalienable and cannot be taken away or denied, that the purpose of government was to secure and protect those rights, and that the people had a privilege, indeed a duty, to change any government that not only failed in that responsibility, but actively sought to impose a tyrannical rule that they did not seek or approve. The founders then went into the specific grievances against King George III and his ministers in the mother country, pointing them back to the ideas stated in the first 2 paragraphs of the Declaration. And so let's begin with a few of these. Picking up from the Declaration's text, the history of the present King of Great Britain is a history of repeated injuries and usurpations, all having in direct object the establishment of an absolute tyranny over these states. To prove this, let facts be submitted to a candid world. First, he has forbidden his governors to pass laws of immediate and pressing importance unless suspended in their operation till his assent should be obtained, and when so suspended, he has utterly neglected to attend to them. This is not the first of the grievances. If those of you who know the Declaration probably have figured that out. We're going to get to that in a moment. But think about it a minute. How many times have we as people who are still engaged in the political processes in this country, who haven't just thrown up our hands and said, and worked to have spent time, money, and energy in electing people to Congress for certain purposes or to reinforce certain political outlooks, only to watch them quickly become assimilated into what is now commonly termed the swamp, and abandoned why they were sent there in the first place? Remember what happened when Tea Party members were elected to Congress? And even without that, how many of you got quickly disappointed with the actions of people you worked hard and donated money to get in there and change things? And it hasn't changed. We've all been there. He has refused his assent to laws, the most wholesome and necessary for the public good. And 3, he has refused to pass other laws for the accommodation of large districts of people unless those people would relinquish the right of representation in the legislature, a right inestimable to them and formidable to tyrants only. Now, the assent to laws reference is actually the first of the grievances against King George, and so they're a little out of sequence, but I put these 2 together because both are connected. In recent decades, we have seen presidents, the executive branch of the government under the Constitution, which all 3 branches, executive, legislative, and judicial, were supposed to be co-equal. But lately, we have seen the executive branch take increased power for itself and carry out programs and policies not mandated by legislation passed by the Congress, but carried out by use of executive orders, much like decrees made by a king, even a king limited by the constitution of its particular nation, such as what was in Great Britain at the time. The trouble with this method, as we have seen in the first month of the Biden pseudo-administration, is that such orders are impermanent and can be altered or negated with the assent of the next administration. In either case, the people have no say as to what is to be done, or at least very little. And things are changed and policies enacted that we have no say in. So basically, it is bypassing the right of representation in the legislatures. 4. He has called together legislative bodies at places unusual, uncomfortable, and distant from the depository of their public records, for the sole purpose of fatiguing them into compliance with his measures. Now, with the rise of the internet, with the rise of the internet and digital records accessible online from almost anywhere, this is a somewhat moot point today. However, according to the Claremont Institute, and it can be found at founding.com, this passage referred to situations that arose in Massachusetts and Virginia, where the colonial governors declared that the meeting sites of the assemblies should be moved for reasons of safety. In both cases, the new sites were at some distance from the places where the public records were kept, and the members of the assemblies charged that moving the sites of their meetings interfered with the public business and prevented them from access from information necessary to conduct it. The new method of such interference with information in public business might lie in the fact that as more records become digital, they can be more easily manipulated and edited by people with the technical skills to do so, often subtly and without the people's consent or even knowledge. Preserving the original documents in such a manner that can be accessible by anyone becomes even more critical in such situations, as insurance against this sort of thing. Of course, in that scenario, navigating the red tape of such bureaucracy can be extremely trying and time-consuming, and fewer people have the patience to endure the process, eventually throwing up their hands and saying, forget it. How many of us keep wearing masks during the COVID crisis simply because we don't want the hassle of being constantly nudged or pushed to do so? Even though studies have shown that, contrary to the proclamations of government officials, masks are ineffective at preventing contracting the virus. Number 5. He has dissolved representative houses repeatedly for opposing with manly firmness his invasions on the rights of the people. The federal government does not have this power, yet. Right now, it doesn't need it. Federal law still overrules state laws in national matters, and those in the government who desire linkage to an oligarchical global rule, aided by allies in the popular broadcast and social media, have shown in this last presidential election the links they are willing to go to in removing duly elected officials that oppose and hinder their agenda. One word: Georgia. And the presidency. The period between the beginning of the troubles with Great Britain and the start of the American Revolution was roughly 12 years. But we have been engaged in this civil Cold War far longer. In 1877, a group of people unhappy with the religious basis for the United States, known as the National Liberal League, met in Rochester, New York, and published a document entitled 9 Demands of Liberalism. If you look up the document online, it's there. which essentially demands the disengagement of the nation from the Christian faith it was based on. You'd think it was written last week. The only reason its ideas have gained ground in the last 2 or 3 generations is that believers have fallen asleep at the wheel, as it were, and largely abandoned engagement in the nation's affairs and institutions. Need I say more? Well, yes, I do. There's much yet to go through, but I don't want to eat up more time in this video, and I'd like to give you an opportunity to digest what we've seen so far. We will take up more next time. That's the Rankin Report for Sunday, March the 7th, 2021. God bless you. Have a good day.